Hello, and welcome to the Safety Brief, your go-to source for the latest trends and insights in cybersecurity. I'm your host, Elizabeth, and today we'll be diving into the topic of cookies and cache security. And no, it's not the chocolate chip kind,
Nom, 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 nom.
but the ones that can turn into real cookie monsters, as you just heard from Matt, if you're not careful. And as I just stated, joining me today is Matt, and thank you, as always, for being here and taking the time. So let's get
Always.
started. Oh, yeah, of course. So let's get started with the basics of cookies and cache. I'll start off with cookies. These store user information like login status and preferences. They are essential for maintaining sessions and personalizing your browser experience. Matt, can you explain the role of cache in web browsers and why it's essential for a smooth browsing experience?
This will be my personal take on it. I'm sure people will not agree with some of this, but cache is basically designed to speed up your browsing experience by storing certain amounts of data that are continually accessed. Such as when you load a web page, you're going to see all of the content on the web page. It's not actively streaming, that's going to be stored in the cache that you're currently using. Now, you asked why it's essential or necessary for a smooth browsing experience. Technically, it isn't. In today's day and age, with the way that our hard drives are actually built with solid state drives, NVMe SSDs running on PCI Express, it honestly, you don't really need to run that large of a cache. You could actually, I mean, if you were given the option to, you could kill the cache, and if you have a fast enough internet, wouldn't matter. You could pull everything down. You could go page to page. You wouldn't notice any difference in experience overall. Um, Part of what you'll notice, and this is kind of a Chrome thing, but I've noticed it with Edge as well. Go to a web page, but have Task Manager up. You want to see how much or what the impact of cache is on a device? Just watch the creep that you'll see from the processes for Chrome, for Edge, even Firefox, even our counterpart who's not here, his favorite, Brave. It all has creep depending on the cache. So it's going to use resources, which is why they give you an option to go in and purge the cache. So you can get rid of all the space that it's actually using, free up space. Again, this used to be a big thing back in the day. Nowadays, with the amount of storage that you have on a device, it's not as necessary. But we'll get into why you should do it anyways as we
For
go forward.
security reasons rather than storage reasons.
Right.
So moving on to what the primary security risks are that are associated with cookies and cache. Cache can expose sensitive data, be manipulated by attackers such as cache poisoning, and can be accessed by unauthorized users or even malware.
Hmm.
Matt, why don't you take off the cookie vulnerabilities and break down how these vulnerabilities can be exploited by cybercriminals?
Ever wanted to be a clone? Well, when you're using cookies, cookies were initially not designed to be malicious. Obviously, the goal of a cookie was to fingerprint and basically kind of give your unique self a way to be identified as you were going to websites to make things a little bit quicker and easier to access. The problem with this is you can actually have malicious tracking cookies that are put in place. Those malicious tracking cookies are designed to take all of your information, feed it back to somebody, allow them to build a cookie that looks and feels kind of like you on the web, and then they can create a fake profile of you on websites that you've been going to. They can use it to actually obtain access. If unfortunately, and some websites are like this, the login information is stored in the cookie, and they get that information, all they have to do is go to the same website. And if they have the cookie present on the machine, it'll let them in. It doesn't look for what version of the browser are you using. It doesn't look for the IP address you're logging in from. Because let's be honest, there's people like me that log in from all over the world.
In
I may
different
not
browsers.
physically be there, but I'm going to log in from all over the world, and that's, I mean, partially for anti-tracking, but doesn't make it any better when you do have a cookie that is being used to impersonate you, because then you've technically been everywhere and there's nowhere that it can say, oh,
There's no anomalies there.
unusual login. Yeah, there's no way to detect an anomaly when you are the anomaly.
Yeah, that's very true. So let's move on to user privacy. How do cookies contribute to user tracking and profiling on the internet? Kind of like what you just broke down. What privacy concerns should users be aware of regarding third-party cookies?
I mean, third party cookies could give access to all kinds of information. It could be as simple as just having whatever your username was or your email that you logged in with. It could be as explicit as knowing way too much information about you, such as all of the information that you filled out on the form to sign up for the website could be dumped into a cookie and could be used for identification. Obviously, they're using it for marketing purposes, because otherwise, what would be the point of having tracking cookies in the first place? They are trying to monetize you as, a product. They want to be able to pitch products to you from other vendors, and that's kind of how they were designed. Cookies were designed to both remember and identify. That identification kind of morphed into, hey, we can use this to sell people things. We can target certain things based on, what cookies we're finding when they go to our website. You think that if you think that they're not looking at, other information on your machine when you go to a website, no, they are 100%. That's how they're able to tailor the experience to you. That's why in that giant blob of text that they have at the bottom when you're signing up for something, it outlines what they are going to use that information for. But most people don't read that. They just hit I agree,
The terms
which
and conditions.
consents
Yeah,
to exactly. And you're now consenting to whatever was in that blob of text that was deemed too much for you to spend time reading.
definitely important to take the time. And something that Mike always says, the one we're missing today,
Cyber
is
Paul
that
Bunyan.
yes, our cyber Paul Bunyan is missing today. But something he says a lot is I can use your cell phone to do a lot more than what I could even use your social to do with. So
Hmm.
if you're logging in or going on to these sites and filling out a form and it already has your name, your email, your phone number, and all that information cached, if you're able to just type, say my name's Elizabeth, if I'm able to just type E and it fills out the entire form for me, that's actually a problem.
Hmm.
It takes a few moments for you to, you know, take the time to type that out yourself. There's no reason why you should have that on there.
Only
Um,
time it should ever autofill is if you're telling it to autofill, and that's from coming from like a password keeper that you are using that has security built in to ensure that data is not being cloned.
yeah, if you're gonna have the form fill, at least have some security around it, at least a little bit. So to conclude all that, users should be aware of how their data is collected, used, and consider measures such as blocking third-party cookies or using privacy-focused browsers and extensions. I use the AVG secure browser on my phone and personal endpoints, for example. Um, Now, regarding the browser cache, what specific security issues can arise from it? Are there like any notable incidents where cache vulnerabilities led to significant data breaches?
In most cases, I mean, I can't think of anything where cache poisoning itself led to a data breach. In most of the things you're going to find, it's people just had crappy passwords in place or bought access, which in turn leads to the terrible passwords they had in place because they were able to be either guessed, found out, or sniffed. Um, there's ways that you can actually use a cache to poison it. We're not going to tell you how to do that. That would be slightly unethical for us to actually tell you how to do that. But kind of the long and short, um, I mean, there's a number of different ways that you could actually do cache poisoning. The biggest one is going to be HTTP response splitting. I mean, it's nothing more than forging DNS, if you really want to break it down. Um, it in and of itself is not going to give you what you would need to really have a data breach. anything on the cache itself, unless you're accessing something internal via a browser, I wouldn't put as large of a threat as like remote desktop or using any kind of file share that is still running on outdated protocols like old school SMB. That if you guys are still using them, this is your wake up call. Stop using them. Okay. SMB, specifically like SMB 1.0, Microsoft even killed that off. You guys should stop enabling it. If your stuff requires it, upgrade. This is your wake up call. Stop. That's what you're looking at. And this is kind of why browsers constantly go through updates. They will look and see what kind of attacks are being leveraged. They will try to build in whatever defenses they possibly can to keep the user safe. This is where Mike's favorite browser, Brave, comes in.
Hmm.
It's stripped down. Yes, it's still based off of Chromium, but it's stripped down. There's not as much running on the back end. You don't have to worry about somebody being able to tamper with it or, you know, having those kinds of worries that you necessarily would run into. There's not much that you're going to be able to do about some of the cache poisoning. Some of the cache poisoning is going to be when you're hitting some other website and it's legitimately using your information, but then using it for nefarious purposes. People building fake websites. And let's be honest, that's a commonality these days. Parked websites, fake websites, anything they can use to try and get somebody to accidentally go to the website.
Hmm.
Um, Easy way for them to get in there. They can then drop a cookie. They can access whatever they really want to. Um, I mean, there's a lot of things, but no, there haven't really been any direct. I went to X because of what was on or in my browser cache. I was breached. It's going to take a lot more than that. It could be a start. It could help them get a foothold, but
Or recon.
yeah, it's all about reconnaissance. That's all it is. You're not going to find somebody that got hit with ransomware purely because of their browser cache. It's going to take a
Not in
lot more
today's
than
day and
that.
age.
No,
Yeah, maybe back then I could see it.
I mean
Be
even
more
back
prevalent.
then, the OG versions of ransomware, you had to click on an executable.
Hmm.
Now, mind you, the AV solutions, well, a lot of people are still using those same AV solutions, so I can't really say that they've gotten any better, or that ransomware's really gotten more advanced. It's just I think most people have kind of just shut their brains down to what needs to be done, and they just hope they don't get hit with something. Um, but yeah, even back in the day, it was still an executable. But the browser cache, I mean, it just gives them a little bit of information. Finding out if there's a correlated username that they use across multiple websites. Finding if there's a website that they frequent. Like if you can see that they are constantly going to a certain website. Let's say it's something not like ESPN, something that's a little bit less known, but this person has some kind of a diehard desire to always go to that. Maybe it's a fan fiction site. Maybe it's an e-commerce site that they like to go to. Not eBay. eBay has protections in place. I know some of the guys that helped create cybersecurity for eBay, and they did a fantastic job on that. But if you find a site that somebody's going to, and you can create a clone of that website, and then have it try to reference the information that's in the cache, you could get all kinds of information about that person. You could find out, you know, their login information if they still have it stored in their browser cache. There's a lot of sites that don't get rid of your current session until you actually close the browser. Chrome has started to put them to sleep per se. Have you ever noticed that when you go back to those tabs that have been asleep, you're still logged in?
Or you can restore sessions. So like if
Mhm.
I were to completely force quit Firefox, I'm able to restore all sessions and I'm still logged
Yep.
in. That's a problem.
Chrome's gotten
That's
better
something you
about
don't
that.
want.
If you close Chrome, it now will force you to log back in, but I think there's a time delay on that because
Hmm.
I have been able to get it to log me right back in. Like if my machine decides to randomly reboot because Windows says it's time to reboot, um, It'll sometimes let me right back in if it's quick enough.
Yeah.
But if it takes more than like a minute, if I restore the session, all those pages come back up, but it asks me to log back in again.
Yeah.
But that's a big thing. That almost goes to Microsoft recall levels of data access. If you really want to break that down, not as bad, obviously, and it doesn't store things in clear text, and you have to go through a little bit more work to get it than what recall would have required. But yeah.
Yeah, so just remember it can be exposed, it can expose sensitive data. It
Mhm.
can be manipulated by attackers. Like Matt said, we can use that information and, you know, form an attack that is creatively created for you, and be accessed by unauthorized parties, which could lead to a potential data breaches. So, considering these risks, what are some best practices for securing cookies and caches? Are there specific settings or tools that can enhance security? I can go ahead and start off with cookies. Um, I would say uh, using secure HTTPs only, same site attributes, and of course, regularly clearing your cookies. And I don't mean the cookie jar. Plus, avoid remember me buttons. A lot of sites have that little button that says remember me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
avoid those as much as possible. It only takes a second to log in, so there's no reason to stay logged into everything or keeping your sessions alive when it's not needed. So when you're done at your endpoint at the end of the day, exit out, log out. That's something that a lot of people don't do nowadays. They just click the X button. They don't even go through logging out. Um, Log out of your email at the end of the day. Log in the next morning. There's no reason to keep those sessions alive.
So on the other end of the spectrum, there's a couple ways that you could actually look at limiting the cache. By default, the browser is going to have a set limit that it likes to use for the web cache or for your browser cache while you're, actively browsing and doing whatever it is you do on the web. We don't want to know. We don't ask. You don't have to tell us. It's perfectly fine. In some cases, we'd like to not know because then we have a little bit, well, we're not liable. Um, but you can go in there in the settings. Chrome is actually really cool about how you can actually do this, and so is Firefox. With Chrome, if you open up a blank page and you go to about:config, you can actually bring up the config and see all kinds of different settings that are available to you. Now, here's something that they don't readily tell you. You can disable the config completely in Chrome. Not the config, but the cache itself. You can fully nuke the cache if you really wanted to. You can run it without a cache on any page that you want to. It does involve going into the developer settings. It is going to obviously mean that web pages are going to load a tiny bit slower because you're not going to have any of that information from prior visits already saved to where it's looking at the framework, et cetera, and loading what's already there and then only really updating or downloading any changes to the site, which is why a lot of people use different frames or use, CSS and stuff on web pages, because that way there's a baseline that's always there and only certain active content gets updated to make the experience faster. Well, that's good and bad. But you can go in and completely kill off using the cache with Chrome. You can do the same thing with Firefox. Um, I haven't looked in Brave, but since Brave is based off of Chrome, I would anticipate you can do the same thing.
Yeah.
Edge, I mean, it was Chrome for a while. Now it's based off of Chromium. So theoretically, you should be able to kill it off as well. But let's be honest, the only reason that people use Edge is to download Chrome in the first place. That's that's Microsoft's claim to fame. They are the most used browser to download Chrome
Or Firefox. Just a
or
different
Firefox,
browser.
or in my case, to access outdated ESXi hosts that still require Internet Explorer. Yeah. If you guys aren't aware, there is an Internet Explorer mode built into Edge. It literally looks the same as Edge. The only thing is the framework changes to where it can actually communicate and behave like OG Internet Explorer. So if you have anything that you have to access that hasn't been updated, looking at you VMware, to be able to work with, Edge, Chrome, etc., it gives you a way to do that. Now, obviously, that means that it's going to be highly less secure.
Oh
So
yeah.
when we talk about that browser cache, we talk about the tracking cookies. You go back to Internet Explorer mode, and the gloves come off. Like you're in a world where we're not even gonna venture as to what vulnerabilities could be accessible at that point. Um,
You're already vulnerable. Just
yeah,
don't even
you're
worry about
you're
it.
already. I mean, the stuff you're using is already vulnerable. You're already sitting there just hoping that nobody finds out what it is. So yeah, you're already playing a dangerous game. We're just gonna sit back and watch you play the dangerous game with some popcorn.
So I know some browsers now block third-party cookies by default, but are there any new features or settings that users should be aware of to protect their data?
Honestly, I haven't really dove into it with how many updates come out for these browsers, and it honestly feels like there's an update every day for
Yeah.
these things. I feel like my Chrome constantly has a different color icon every hour. I mean, they are doing constant development on this. They are trying to keep everybody as safe as possible. They're building in new features. They're building in the ability that you can go in and set it to where you don't want to be tracked. There's ways that you can reject tracking cookies within the
hmm
browsers. I mean, this is all stuff that you want to do. If you go in and you reject tracking cookies and you disable the cache, guess what? You don't have that much to worry about at that point. Your
Yeah.
browsing is going to be a little bit cumbersome compared to what others are when they just go to a website and it pops up for them. But your security is going to be ultimately better off in doing that. And I mean, that kind of, I hate to say it, but that almost is cybersecurity as a whole.
Security over ease of access.
You guys, I mean, everybody talks about, well, we want this to be easy. We want this to be set it and forget. But we also want the utmost level of protection in our environment. Well, it doesn't go that way. You can have. They also say they want it as cheap as possible. I mean, that's just that always. I mean, who doesn't want NSA level security, but they want to pay Dollar General prices? Um, that doesn't work. You can have cheap and easy, or you can have something that's going to be more secure and a bit more cumbersome. You cannot have. I mean, it's that tripod thing, the triangle of. I like to call it the triangle of sadness because you can never have all of it, but you can have two out of three. You can have something that is cheap and easy. You can have something that is more expensive and secure, but there's no way that you can have something that is super secure, super cheap, and super easy. There is going to be a level of investment that has to be made in order to keep things the way that you, or to give you the utmost of security. You're going to have to make sacrifices. In the terms of browsing the web, it may take your pages a little bit longer to load. You may not have your usernames saved on the website. You may not have the ability to just go to the website and blink twice and it logs you in. I mean, that's just it's something that you're going to have to deal with. It comes down to how much does your data mean to you? Are you willing to tolerate a little bit of discomfort to ensure that you are actually maintaining a strong security presence on your devices?
Yeah. And when it comes to cache and cookies, it's actually very small. So what he means by it's going to take a little bit longer, the first time you go to a website, the very first time, you might notice it takes a little bit longer. You get the white screen and it's loading, but then the second time you go, everything pops up a lot quicker. So that tiny little millisecond of load time is what we're talking about. It's not, waiting 5 minutes for something to come up. It's just going to the site for the first time every time you go to the site, if that makes sense. Instead of putting your little fingerprint on that site, that way it pops up quicker. Another thing is some browsers offer to automatically clear cache and cookies after each session or specified intervals. This helps in maintaining privacy and freeing up storage space as well, as we stated previously. So that might be something you want to look into to see if you can maybe clear your cache and cookies every Friday before you go home or just have it automatically clear every time you close your browser.
I don't know if this is actually the one showing. Can you actually
Google?
see this? Yeah. Okay, yeah, this is the right one. Okay, so over here, and I don't think it's going to bring it up. It's not going to bring it up. That's super helpful. Let me tell you that. Okay. So what I'm doing right now is I'm on a Google Chrome tab. Okay. I hit F12. It's bringing up my developer tools. Unfortunately, you guys do not see the developer tools because apparently it doesn't show. But right where my mouse is disappearing is the developer tools. And you have all kinds of different tabs. You have elements, console, recorder. You hit the little double arrows when it comes up, and you're going to have performance insights, sources, performance, memory, app security, and lighthouse. One of them that I didn't call out is network. If you click on network, there's actually a spot at the very top where it says preserve log, and that's a checkbox, where it actually says do not clear log on page reload or navigation. Do not ever check that box. We're talking about how to be secure. That's how to be insecure right there. But there is another one over here where it says disable cache. So I'm going to click that. And mind you, this only stays active while the dev tools are open. So your browsing area is going to get smaller because you're going to have the giant developer tools window that's open. So I disabled the cache. So for fun, we're going to go to Yahoo. All right. That's without the cache being enabled. Extremely fast.
Yeah.
There's, and that's what I was saying. In today's day and age, mind you, this machine has 64 gigs of RAM. It's running a Gen 4 M2 solid state drive. I mean, this thing is nasty. Um, but
Very little compromise there.
very little compromise. It's also really fun because if you have that network pane open and you go to a website, you can actually see how much junk actually opens on the back end. In this case, I had something called, or something, they opened up a Taboola website, which was automatically blocked based on my preferences. It looks like that was part of a tracking cookie. There's another tracking cookie that they tried to open, and it came in the form of a document on the back end. So you can actually see everything that they are trying to run when you initially go. And you can see it from the start time all the way down to where the page completed. And part of this is because I'm running an ad blocker as well. So you can actually see everything on the back end that gets blocked and how many times or how many different sources a website is then providing your information to.
Yeah, that sucks it wouldn't show the pain because that would have been really helpful. But he definitely
Yeah,
explained it very easily. So, and every browser is different, but definitely just take the time to look into it and see what you can disable, what you can clear. There's some people that don't even know that cookies and cache exist. So, if this is your first time hearing about it, you know, YouTube University will definitely show you how to clear it or disable it for any browser that you may be using.
just a suggestion if you're going to go to Google University or YouTube University, cache is CACHE. Please don't search cookies and cache.
It's not cash money.
Exactly. You're going to get an entirely different education if you search for that. But
Maybe the Girl Scouts.
probably, I mean that is a license to have cookies and get cash.
Yeah.
Most
So
of my cash because Thin Mints are delicious.
those are the best. So looking ahead and to kind of close off this stream today, what trends do you foresee in the realm of cookies and cache security? How might advancements in web technology influence these areas in the next few years, in your opinion?
Honestly, with the push for everybody being more secure, I anticipate that there's going to be a browser that's actually brought out that by default does not leverage cookies and does not leverage cache. And that's purely because people that are security conscious will want something that they can utilize that they're not going to have to worry about that one other aspect while they're on the web.
Yeah.
There is absolutely zero reason that you need to have tracking cookies or need to have the cache enabled. So having an option that gives everybody that, I assume that, or I anticipate that's going to be something that comes out. With the push on keeping everybody's data safe, Europe has been making much better advances than we have over in the States as far as users' data privacy, etc., with GDPR and everything else. Eventually, I anticipate the US will wake up and start pushing for the same kind of regulation of user data to help keep everybody secure. Granted, they have to stop getting hit with ransomware first. So that's a big thing. I'm just saying, guys, prevention is a possibility. You do not have to get hit with Play or Blackbasta or Lockbit or any of these other guys that are out there. You know, your cache is one thing, but when they take a cache of information from your entire environment, well,
That's
I mean, your
another.
browser cache is going to be part of that, so it ties in. But there's ways that we can actually keep things secure in the future. There's ways that user data can be better secured, can be better protected. And quite honestly, I mean, I hate to say this, but getting off Google is going to be a start. Finding a browser that doesn't use or sell or, you know, any do what you don't want with your actual data, that's going to be the biggest thing.
Yeah, our missing Paul Bunyan is a big advocate for Brave, and as I stated previously, I also use AVG Secure, which is also a secure browser. If you'd like to look any of those up, that could be your homework for this week. See if it's something that aligns with what you're wanting to do. Um, I would say my prediction is of again increasing focus on privacy with a more robust tracking prevention and advanced cache management techniques to mitigate these security risks, such as setting a timer and saying delete my cache at 5 p.m. today, delete my cookies at 5 p.m. today, and so on and so forth. Well, that is all the time we had for today. A big thank you to Matt for joining us and breaking it down. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. And be sure to join in next time for some more tips and trends in cybersecurity. Until then, stay safe and, of course, stay frosty.